Yes. Okay, so we are factoring with GCFs. Okay, so GCFs are just greatest common factors. Okay, what's a factor? Who knows? So factors are when you multiply, right? So like 2 times 3, 2 and 3 are factors of 6, correct? Okay, so they're just things that multiply to give you that. So it has to be a whole number. It cannot be a fraction, cannot be a decimal. Okay? So we are going to look at factors. So we're going to figure out, and greatest common factor just means the factor that both of these have in common, and we want the biggest one. Because they might have multiple in common, but we want the biggest one they have in common. Yes? Okay, so knowing that, we're going to do one of them kind of fully by hand with assistance from the calculator. And then we're going to do, I'm going to kind of show you all some tips and tricks from the calculator to make life a little easier. Yes? Okay, so on the front, we don't really have to worry about the reminder number 1 because it says, are they in order? Well, these are just like listing. You see that? But if you look at the back, we have expressions, kind of like equations with no equal signs. That's where order matters. So we don't have to worry about that, but we are, number 2 and number 3 do matter. It says what do they have in common, what numbers, and what letters do they have in common. So those do matter on the front. So here, let's look at 28. So I know, I always start with my smallest number. So I know 1 times 28, give me 28, right? 1 times the number always works. Okay, 28 is even, so I know that 2 goes into it. So 28 divided by 2 gives me 14. So I know 2 times 14 also are factors of 28. Yes? Okay, so I can divide, if I don't know, 3 didn't go into it because it gave me a decimal. So I know 3 is not a factor. So 28 divided by 4, not 43. Gave me 7, so I have 4 times 7. 28 divided by 5, well, does 5 go into 28? No. Okay, so 6 does not. And then 7 is already there. So I don't have to worry about 7 because 7 is just going to give me 4, and I already have that, right? So we're done. These are all my factors for 28. Yes? So now I'm going to find all my factors for 40. So I'm going to start the exact same way. I'm going to start with 1 times 40. Okay, 40 is even, so I know 2 goes into it 20 times. 3 does not go into 40, and again, if you're unsure, you can just divide. Okay? 4 does, how many times? 10. 5 does, how many times? 8. 6, so again, you can divide if you're unsure, does not. And then 7 does not, and then what comes after 7? 8, and we already have that listed, so we're done. Does that make sense? So these are all my factors of those numbers. So now we have to figure out what they have in common. Well, they both have a 1. They both have a 2. They both have a 4. Do they have anything else in common? No, this one has a 7. This does not have a 7. 14, no 14 here. 28, no 28 here. Okay, therefore, none of those are in common over there. 5, 8, 10, 20, 40. None of those are in common. So what is the largest number they both have in common? 4. So 4 is my GCF. Now, do we really want to list all of our factors every single time? No. So that's where I'm going to kind of show you easier ways. Now, these are bigger numbers because I don't have letters. They're not really an expression. If you notice when we get into like the equations, they're not going to be huge numbers. So like if you look at your practice problems, your numbers are not huge. So don't stress out about these big numbers. But if you could do the big numbers, then you could for sure do the little numbers. Okay? So I always pick my smallest number first. So which number is smaller? Huh? No, out of these two. 21. So you can go to your y equals, and you can type your number divided by x. So you can go to your y equals, and you can do your number divided by x. And when you go to your table, it's going to list your factors for you. So I have 1 and 21. And then I have 3 and 7, because 2 gave me a decimal. And then I go down, and the next pretty one I have is 7 and 3, which don't I already have that? So I do not have to rewrite it. So those are all my factors of 21. Well, I can come back here. I don't even have to list my factors of 55. I can literally just go to my home screen. Does 21 go into 55? No. And if you don't realize it right away, you can divide it and realize, nope, doesn't work. Okay? Does 7 go into 55 pretty? No. Does 3 go into 55 pretty? No. So what's the only option? 1. So if there is no number that works, 1 will always be your answer. So you don't have to list all your numbers, okay? You just have to think about the numbers of your smallest number. So again, which number is my smallest number?
15.
15. So if we come here, we could do 15 divide x. And I have 1 times 15, 3 times 5, and that's it. Does 15 go into 18? Pretty? No. And I can, if you're unsure, didn't work. Does 5 go into 18?
No.
No. Does 3 go into 18?
Yes.
Yes. Does 3 go into 66?
Yes.
Again, if you're unsure, not 6. 3. You can double check it, and it does, so 3 is my GCF. So with your bigger numbers, you really only need to list your smaller numbers, factors, and figure it out from there, okay? Now with letters, it's a little different. So these are just letters. I'm going to write out, these are 3 different terms, right? So I have x to the 3rd power, which just means x times x times x. And I'm going to list them vertically. I also have x to the 7th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I have x to the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What do all 3 of those rows have in common? 3 of them. Okay, so they all have that 1, 2, 3 in common. And then after that, they don't have anything in common because this one doesn't have any more. Okay, so what do you notice? Well, I know that they have 3 in common. And 3 is my smallest exponent. So it's always just your smallest exponent of your letter that matches. So here, do all of the letters match?
No. Yes.
Why? Okay, this is y to the 1st, y to the 4th, and y to the 7th. Which one's my smallest?
Y.
Y to the 1st power, so it's just y. So it's always just your letter that matches smallest exponent. So you're always choosing your smallest exponent. Any questions with those? So now let's look at some 6 and 7 that have numbers and letters. Okay? You're still going to think about them one at a time. So let's think about numbers first. We're going to kind of ignore the negatives. We're not going to pay attention to the negatives until we get to the back. Okay? So here we're just going to pay attention to the positives for now. So knowing that, what's my smallest number? The 6. Okay, so I know 6 is 1 times 6 and 2 times 3, and that's it. That's all I can have that multiplies to give me 6. Does 6 go into 10? No. Does 3 go into 10?
No.
Does 2 go into 10?
Yes.
Does 2 go into negative 8?
Yes.
Yes, so 2 is my GCF. Not yet. We've only looked at the numbers first. So now let's look at our variables with our exponents. So what, do they all have a letter x? Yes. So x is a part of my common factor. How many can I take away from all of them?
1.
Yeah, just 1, because this has 1, this has 3, and this has 2. So to be fair, I can only take 1 away from all of them. So it's just 1. Remember, it's your smallest exponent. Okay, when it comes to negatives, it more pertains to whenever we have expressions, which we'll talk about in a second. But we always pay attention to our largest degree. Which one has the largest degree? To the 4, right? It says positive. So our GCF is going to be positive. Okay? So knowing that, we don't have to worry about the negatives. Now, which number is the smallest, not including negative? The 18. So I know 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6, 4 does not go into it, 5 does not go into it. Does 18 go into 63? If you're like me, y'all, I look at 63 and that's not a number that I can just like recognize. Okay, that number is a weird one. So it does not. So I know 18 is not my GCF. Now does 9, that's a 9. It looks like a 7, but it's a 9. Does 9 go into 63? Yes. So 9 is my GCF number. Oh, freeze. Does 9 go into 27?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so 9 is my GCF number. Okay, and then how many y's can I take from all 3 terms?
Only
2. Okay, I want you to try number 8 while I take attendance really fast. Bless you. Okay, what y'all get?
A to the 3rd power and B.
Mm-hmm. Because we have a to the 3rd, a to the 5th, a to the 6th. So 3 is the smallest. And we have a squared, b squared, so it's just b. Okay, so that is what we do when we have just a list of terms. So now flip to the back. That's just finding the GCF. Now we're going to actually have to find the GCF and factor it out. Okay, because these are expressions. Okay? So, finding the GCF, we also have to make sure they're in order first. Okay? So, I'm going to check their order. Now, remember, when we talk about order, we haven't done this in a while. Okay, we look at it per term, and we add the degrees. Yes? The exponents. So, what's 4 plus 3?
7.
What's 3 plus 4?
7.
And what's 3 plus 2?
5.
So is this one in order from highest to lowest? Yeah, it doesn't need to change because these are both 7, so it doesn't matter which one's first, which one's second. So is it worth changing? No, leave it alone. It's fine. So 7, 7, 5, we're good. So it's in order. Let's go. So now which number is my smallest coefficient?
15? I mean 9.
The 9. Does 9 go into 15?
No.
No. What's the only other number that goes into 9 besides 1 and 9?
5.
No, 9. 3. Does 3 go into 15?
Yes.
Does 3 go into 18?
Yes.
Then 3 is my GCF number. Okay? And it's going to be positive because my first term's positive. So now, do they all have an A?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take out an A. How many? 3. And then do they all have a C?
Yes.
And how many can I take out?
2.
2. So that is my GCF. But because I'm actually having to factor it out, okay, what does factor mean? We said it a second ago. It means to multiply. What's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing. Since I'm taking it out, I have to divide it out. So this is going to divide by A, 3A cubed C squared, 3A cubed C squared, 3A cubed C squared. Okay, so don't let this stress you out. Simple division that you could type in your calculator. What's 9 divided by 3? 3. And what do we do to our exponents when we're dividing? Who remembers? Subtract. So what's 4 minus 3? Yeah, just 1. So A. And what's 3 minus 2? 1, so it's just C. So there's your first term simplified. Minus, what's 15 divided by 3? And then A3 over A3, those cancel or become 1. And then 5 times 1 is just 5, so I'm going to leave it. And 4 minus 2 is 2. Plus, what's 18 divided by 3?
6. No, I'm tripping.
You're right. And then A cubes cancel, C squareds cancel. Remember, that technically gives me 6 times 1 times 1. But what's 6 times 1?
6.
Times 1? 6. So does it change anything when you cancel something?
No.
No. So you don't have to worry about it. So that's your answer.
We just
You just have to take it out. You have to keep it as an expression. Okay, now 10 is a little different. So again, we have to check our order first. So we're going to look per term. So here's a term, here's a term, here's a term. So this is a degree of 3, this is a degree of 4, and this is also a degree of 3. Okay, is that in order? No, the degree of 4 needs to be in the front. So I'm just going to flip-flop these first two terms. So I get negative 15a squared d squared minus 5d cubed plus 10ad squared. Now it's in order. And I can start trying to find my GCF. Now, my first term is negative, therefore my GCF has to be negative. Now, if I wouldn't have changed the order, I still would have had a negative because I got lucky and there was a negative already there. But what if this was a positive 5d cubed? I would have taken out a positive, and what should I take out? A negative, because this is my higher degree. So make sure you always put it in order first, yes? Okay, so knowing that, I'm going to have a negative GCF. And what's my smallest coefficient?
5.
Does 5 go into 15?
Yes.
Does 5 go into 10?
Yes.
Then 5 is my number. So I have a negative 5 so far for my GCF. Do all 3 terms have an A?
No.
No. So can I take out an A? No. Do all 3 terms have a D?
Yes.
What's the least amount?
2.
2. So there's your GCF. Okay, 2 negatives makes A. And 15 divided by 5 is 3. D squared over D squared cancels. And I'm left with A squared. Negative over negative gives me another positive. 5 divided by 5, well, technically that cancels, or you could put a 1. Either way. Okay? And what's 3 minus 2? 1. So it's just D to the first power, or just D. And then minus 2, because 10 divided by negative 5, A. So here's your answer. Okay, we're almost done. Bear with me. No notes tomorrow. Okay, look at number 11. Okay, what is your GCF? Well, first off, do all 3 terms have a number? Well, let's check our order. Sorry. My brain is not all here yet. Okay, 5 plus 3 is 8. 6 plus 1 is 7. 4 plus 3 is 7. So yeah, it's in order. Okay, do all 3 terms have a coefficient?
Yes.
Technically yes, but does this one show a coefficient? No. Do you have to put the 1?
No.
No, but if there's no number there, do I have to take out a number for anything?
No.
No, so I don't have to worry about numbers because they don't all have a big number. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's just focus on letters now. Do they all have M's? Okay, well, how many can I take out?
1.
Just 1. What about N's?
Yes. And 3.
So there's my GCF. Now, if you put a 1 in front of your GCF, that's totally fine. That's not wrong. Okay? So if you put 1 MN cubed, that's perfect. They're both right. The nice thing about when there's no coefficient, though, is you don't have to worry about dividing your big number, because 12 divided by technically 1 or nothing is just 12. Now we subtract, so 5 minus 1 is 4, and n cubes cancel. Minus 14, m's cancel, 6 minus 3 is 3. And then here, n's cubed cancels, minus 4 minus 1 is 3. Okay, number 12 is a little weird. Don't let it stress you out. We are still going to look at order, though. But we're not going to pay attention to the parentheses, because that will make it a little crazy. We're just going to pay attention to what's out front. So this has a 3 and a 1, so this is a degree of 4. And this has nothing. Technically, you could put a 1, so it's a degree of 0, because there's no letters out front. Is it in order? Highest to lowest? Yeah, so we don't have to worry about changing anything. What do they have in common? Because we're doing by term, and yes, they have plus, but this is a term, this is a term. What do those two terms have in common? The parentheses, right? Aren't the parentheses exactly the same? The P plus Q. So that's your GCF. So when I take it out, it cancels, and what's left is 7xy cubed. And this cancels. Well, if the top and bottom both cancel, what does that equal? Not 0, 1. Because anything divided by itself is 1. So be careful. Don't ever say 0 or cancel it all the way. Yes, but I said we didn't want to get it all confusing with thinking about the insides. So just focus on what's in front when you're looking at problems like this. Okay? Any questions here? Okay, so the last one, it says find the mistake. Okay, I'm going to be nice and I'm going to tell you the GCF is correct. So I want y'all to try to find the mistake. I'm going to give you like a minute to look and then we'll go over it together. Last one. Has anybody found the mistake?
Yeah, I think so.
What is it?
This part?
What should it have been? So what should that become? 1. Because isn't this 4 divided by 4, c squared, d, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. Remember, anything divided by itself equals 1. Good job, y'all. Okay, so be careful. These divided did give you these two terms. Those were correct. But if something is divided by itself, it doesn't just cancel and go away. Yes, we cross it out, but if you notice, I always draw a line. If you ever notice when I'm adding something that zeroes out, I always do this because it's 0. Okay? I do the difference because it's different. So like this is 1, this is 0. That's the difference. This does leave you with a number. Okay? So be super careful with that. But that's your answer. Okay, so you do have a practice.